Hello, everyone. This is Chala, CEO and founder of The Repositioning Expert. Welcome back to another Tuesday Tea Time live with Chala. I am looking at sales meeting fumbles. It takes so much time, so much energy to actually land a B2B sales meeting with a corporate buyer that it is a crime in action for you to be fumbling, doing unprofessional things that are keeping you from closing the sale. Your team. I usually work with founders and CEOs of small businesses who are actually involved in the pitches, and they either bring team members along or they have team members go on their own. But either way, I hope you're going to find some of the things that you should not be doing. And I feel very qualified to talk about this specifically because I was a corporate buyer of services for 18 years when I worked for Pepsi, Pizza Hut, Frito-Lay. And wait, let me take a sip of my Tuesday protein time. This one's after the gym, after Zumba. Okay. All right. So, sales software company EBSTA found that 70% of B2B sales reps missed their quota last year. So this year is not going to be any easier. And one of the biggest complaints that I hear from business owners and CEOs, and I work specifically with, the 3 to 10, $15 million revenue. So that kind of small. And what the number one problem they have is to try to get that meeting. So once they get the meeting, they feel confident that they can close it. But here are some of the huge common missteps and fumbles that I see and that I see them making and that I saw for 18 years, really. So the first one is generic pitch. Generic is the death of differentiation. Generic is the death of marketing, in my opinion. For a company, it's really the death of attention, generic, because it's so hard to stand out to begin with. If you're saying and doing everything that has nothing to do with their specifics, you're talking in generalities, you're talking at large about everyone, it's not going to work. So let me give you more specifics about a generic pitch. First of all, it has no personalization, meaning you haven't done the homework to figure out what is that industry pain that you're in front of and what their actual company within that industry specific pain is. Even more, you need to personalize to what the actual purchaser's pain is, their specific situation, their specific, company standing, positioning, whatever it is. The more granular you can get, the more focused you can get about their pain, the more you can personalize it and the more you'll stand out. So that's one of the biggest fumbles is people come to me. They used to come to me when I was vetting vendors or they were pitching to me, and they would have this cookie cutter presentation. And let me tell you, the companies that I work with, the clients that I work with, their sales departments usually have a cookie cutter presentation that they throw at everybody under the kitchen sink in any industry, any buyer, any size, because they don't want to do the work. And I'm often like their least favorite person because I make them personalize it. I make them do homework to figure out what is the number one pain in that industry, what is the number one pain of that client customer, even go further and do research to figure out what is the biggest pain of everyone that you're talking to, because you need to relate to them both on a personal level, company level, and industry level. So that's personalization. The second is the niching. So a niche is you need to, as a company, have a niche where you are super specialized in one industry, mainly one industry, and you have content that supports that. When they go and Google you, they will find that you are an expert in their industry. You have content in their pain and a solution to their pain, and you have lots and lots of case studies. That is your content around that pain that demonstrates how you're an expert in solving that pain and how you did it and what the success was. So the niche is going to demonstrate that you can help them to begin with, even before you get into the room. But during the pitch, the reason why it's not going to be generic is because you're going to be demonstrating those case studies. And the case studies have to be around their pain, their scope of pain. I used to have so many companies that were pitching me that would come and showcase their biggest success clients. And those clients had nothing to do with my size of budget. And I'm thinking, how are you going to work with me and my budget when all you're showing me is it's like tone deaf? You can't even hear what my problem is. So generic pitch is the death and of the biggest fumbles of sales, B2B sales meetings. Number 2 is being too pushy or bossy. And I will never forget a really, really large supplier had landed a sales meeting with us and had like booked all of our top executives into attending. They had the sway, they had the promise to deliver enough of an important message that we were all invested and we all showed up. And the entire presentation was amazing, except for one thing. They assumed our pain and it was wrong. They assumed the brand problem and it was wrong. Whatever research they did, it didn't reflect what we were truly fighting for. And so they had actually built this whole programming, this whole proposal around an assumption. And they were telling us what they thought our problem was, and it wasn't. They were so off. And it was, now had they sourced how they got to that conclusion and what they did to research that pain and where they found that, they might have even convinced us, but we knew from consumer research, we knew from decades of studying, the market, we knew from talking to our suppliers that that wasn't the problem. We knew what the problem was. And instead of maybe asking us before the meeting, or instead of talking to some of our suppliers and customers, they just assumed it. So assuming their pain is the number 1 way of being too pushy or bossy. Number 2 is no, you shoulds, no, you need to. Like that gets people's backs up. And one of the biggest things that I warn my clients about is talking about the price in terms of that you have the lowest price, because especially if you're talking to procurement, but it doesn't matter who you're talking to at a corporation, they'll get their backs up. One, because they feel like they already got the best value for the price of what they're already buying, which most likely they're already buying the services that you're selling. And 2, nobody wants to put their neck on the line for the cheapest. In fact, the cheapest option often is looked at with suspicion in corporations. So no, you should, no, you need to, and no assuming what their pain is. I always want my clients to do a thorough job of researching the pain. And, if they're not already an expert in that industry's pain that they're targeting and that they've gotten into the sales meeting with, then 1, they need to relook at their strategy and they need to be more consistent so they can become a known expert with their content and their delivery of the sales meeting and the pitch. And 2, they really need to do a better job of sales meetings and researching a sales meeting before you go in. Okay. These are all this is not a sermon. It is based on true, real life experiences of the largest companies selling to us, making these mistakes. So I'm hoping that you won't be making those mistakes. All right. The me instead of you, the use of the word me, us, our, instead of the word you, has actually been statistically tracked in RFPs as resulting the ratio of the overuse of me versus you has been tracked to losing contracts or losing RFPs. And the same goes for any pitches, any sales meetings. Has to be about them. You have to be talking about, as soon as you start the presentation, the biggest fumble used to be that agencies or whoever the vendor was would start talking about themselves, like as if they're introducing themselves. And that is the tried and true method. And that's what everybody does. And I get it. But with my clients, I tell them, flip it around, start with them. Because as soon as when you talk about them, the sweetest word in the English language is the person's own name, right? Same goes for the company. Start with them, start with their, the research that you did on them, the pain points that they have and how you validated that. So start with them, stop using me, us, And then if all of the stuff that you need to say about your credentials, credibility, unique sauce, special proposition has to be baked into the case studies of how you helped others in the same problem and what the results were. You simply have to just bake it into stories instead of talking about you. My favorite saying for a client who's about to pitch is have self-amnesia, meaning stop talking about yourself, forget about yourself. Okay, number 4 is lack of uncovering the true urgency. One of my clients is actually asking me about this, Chala, in the sales conversation. How do we uncover the urgency if there isn't any? So one, there is definitely a questioning methodology that involves open-ended questions, non-leading questions. This is all coach training that I received that taught me how to not lead the answer, but to actually uncover what is truly lying in the heart of that client or that prospect in terms of what their true pain is and what they value and what they'll spend to achieve whatever result that they're looking for or to avoid that pain, because 70% of humans purchase based on pain. So remember that. So the lack of uncovering the true urgency is you have to get people down to the cost. Now, for businesses, that's often a dollar cost. Sometimes it's the person's job cost. Like there are surveys done where even purchasers that are part of 7 people, large teams on average, which is the average of today's buying teams, they're still afraid to bring in vendors that they like, vendors that they want, services that they want. They're afraid of losing face. They're afraid of losing their jobs. So until you bring out that fear in that conversation through these open-ended strategic questions, you are not going to be able to uncover the cost and the size of the urgency of the problem. And that is an art. I've learned it through practicing it. I've learned it through paying lots and lots of sales coaches on how to teach me how to uncover that. And I teach that now, but it truly is an art. And it's one of the things that I teach my clients that are even in the multiple millions. And we're still not using this, uncovering questions to uncover the actual cost, which then elevated them to be able to sell at a higher level, because most of the time, the cost of the pain is a fraction. I mean, I meant to say it the opposite way. Your services cost a fraction of the actual cost of the pain, especially if you look at it and do the math with them of the pain over time. And normally, my clients are selling a one-time solution, which is some sort of service or strategy. So that's what's available to you once you uncover the urgency. And number 5, lastly, the 5th B2B sales meeting fumble is that you're too long-winded, that you talk too much, that you present too much information, and you do not engage them in a conversation. In my opinion, a sales meeting and your presentation is simply a very brief touch point of telling stories of success of very similar problems that you've solved for very similar clients in the same industry, and using that as a touch point and a launching pad to ask questions of the people that are in the room. And when I talk about, my sales training, you may remember that I'm very particular about who needs to be in the room. So it has to be the buyer in terms of the services, in terms of the dollar, the financial person as well. So the purse and the pain, and the person who's actually going to be using the services. So unless we have both those people in the room, you can't really truly have a one close sale type of short, quick, accelerated timeline for your corporate sales meetings. And you often end up fumbling them. So remember, don't offer too many call to actions, not too much info. It's all focused on their pain, and just tell stories. Okay. I hope that was useful. And I am hoping that you get your next sales meeting and you do not fumble it. And I will see you next week. Take care.